You may have heard that Social Security is going bankrupt or that benefits are going to decrease starting in 2033. Today, I want to share some insight into what that means at large and, more importantly, for your retirement. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the True Wealth Retirement Show. If we've met before, I'm Planner Mike, a certified financial planner professional and owner of True Wealth Financial. I believe that retirement should be prosperous, enjoyable, and purposeful. This is a show that's dedicated to helping Christians retire with confidence and clarity so that they'll be freer to serve God and live the life they truly desire. I appreciate you taking the time to tune in to this week's show. No doubt, Social Security plays a big part in a retirement income for many, many retirees. Retiring really is about income replacement. That's really what it's all about. It's the idea that you're going to step away from work and you're going to need income to pay your bills in the future. Hence, in the True Wealth Total Retirement System, retirement income is one of the four pillars to support our overall plan, of which Social Security plays a large role. So when people see headlines about benefits being cut by major institutions like CNBC or Kiplinger or CBS News or even Yahoo Finance that says it's going bankrupt, that can be pretty scary and pretty concerning. So today I want to discuss three things about Social Security insolvency. I want to discuss first what the Social Security Administration itself is actually saying about this. Number two, kind of deciphering that and what does that really mean. And number three, what should you do about it and what do I think will happen? And of course, we'll end the show with a micro action that'll help get you one step closer to confidently retiring. So to start with, what is the Social Security Administration saying about this? So every year, the Social Security Administration puts out several annual reports on a whole lot of different topics. One of them is the OASI Trustee Report, or the Old Age Survivor Insurance Report. And it gives a lot of information about Social Security. And if you actually looked at that report, it doesn't take very long until you get to page 3, which reads, considered separately, the reserves of the OASI Trust Fund are projected to become depleted during 2033 under immediate assumptions, AKA they're running out of money. It's even got to the point where the Social Security Administration put out a message to the public, which basically says that the trust fund will be able to pay 100% of its total scheduled benefits until 2033 unchanged. At that time, the fund's reserves will become depleted and continuing program income will be sufficient to pay 79% of scheduled benefits. Now, this is not really new. In fact, this has been happening for many, many, many years. Every year, the trustee report is put out, and every year it's projecting a different year. The only difference is that every year it's getting a little bit closer for two reasons. One, we're a year, we're changing the calendar, so we're getting another year ahead. And number two, that year's decreasing. I remember, not too long ago it was 2037, and then it was 2035, and then now it's 2033. So it's kind of getting closer because we're squeezing it both ways. So the government does a great job of using terminology and putting out statements that the average person reads, and it just doesn't make sense. So let's break it down a little bit, what they're actually trying to say here. So Social Security essentially is a pay-as-you-go system, meaning every month people are paying into it, and every month people are receiving benefits out of it. And the supposed trust fund really comes into play if there's a surplus, meaning they take in more than they pay out, or a deficit, meaning that they pay out more than they take in. So let's jump over to the iPad a little bit here to illustrate, and I think it'll make sense to you. So every week, people are paying into the Social Security Administration, through their payroll, through FICA taxes, stuff like that. And every month, people are getting money coming out of that same account. So the way to think about this is that it's like some sort of like checking account, right? Money's coming in, money's going out. And for years, there has been more coming in than there has been going out. Well, when that occurred, that money, that excess money, went into a trust fund, right? You can think of this as like a savings account, right? The money would essentially, the extra money would go into that. But over time, it changed where there's more money going out. And therefore, instead of money going into this savings account, money essentially was going out of it to cover the excess that wasn't coming in. So that's essentially what is happening right now. And what they're saying is that this account here is going to run out of money in 2033 based upon the projections of how much is coming in and how much is going out, assuming factors don't change. Once this money then is gone, there won't be any savings left. And then what is coming in, essentially, it will only cover 79% of the total amount going out. So that's the overall problem. So again, based upon current projections, meaning nothing changes, everything stays the same, the money to be left in the savings account will be gone come 2033. And at that point, the money that's coming in and the projected amount that's going out, there won't be enough to pay 100%. There will only be enough to pay 75%. So it really kind of depends on, those projections and whether they hold fast. So then the question is, okay, what do we do about it? Well, just like a household where they're spending more than they're bringing in, there's only two ways to save it. Number one is to reduce expenses, aka cut benefits, so start paying out as much to the people who are receiving it. Or number two, raise the amount going into it, right? Just like your household. If you're spending more than you make, you cut expenses or you go get a part-time job and you make more money. That's the only way to balance it out. So how does the Social Security Administration increase income? Well, they raise the amount that they collect on Social Security. Hence, this is obviously a political hot potato, which is why they keep kicking it down the road until eventually they can't. So with that backdrop, I want to share two things with you that you can do in terms of this for planning your retirement and then what I think will happen. But first, if you're finding this information valuable or helpful, please do me a favor, hit that like button down there. It'll help to spread this information to others who might need it. And it's a great way to say thank you and show your appreciation for the show. Okay, so what can you do about this? Well, I think there's two things you can do. Number one, you cannot worry about it. I mean, really, what can you do about it? You can't change anything regarding it. What's happening is happening. You say, well, I could vote. I mean, maybe, I guess, but from my perspective, it's pretty clear that neither political party really want to do with this, right? Like, they've known about it for years. It's been happening. Everybody knows it's coming. During the Obama administration, they didn't do anything. Trump administration won. He didn't do anything. The Biden administration didn't do anything. It's projected to run out post 2028. So I presume the current administration is not going to do anything yet. The senators that are there now potentially could be out of office by the time it comes around. The House votes every 2 years. So if they do something now, that could cost them elections. So I don't see why anybody, any politician, I should say, is really concerned about doing anything. And yes, it would be great if we had statesmen or stateswomen who would, care about the greater of the country. And maybe some do, but I just think it's too much of a political hot potato to deal with. So, but I do want to give you something constructive that you can do as well, right? Like I've heard a lot of people, especially in their 20s, in their 30s, and obviously I said this too, is to plan for it like it's not going to be there. I can remember saying that when I started learning about Social Security in my late 20s and how it worked and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine and great if you're young, right? That's kind of having an internal locus of control, and that can be motivating to you, and you can take action and save more and invest more. But it doesn't really help you if you're knocking on the door of retirement, right? Like if you're within the next 10 years of retirement, you can't go back to 20 and save more, right? It's just you don't have the mathematical time anymore. But here is something that you could do that might be helpful for you. And that is you can stress test your retirement plan to see if you can absorb the shock of a potential Social Security cut. We call this making a financial plan resilient, right? So we've done shows on this before, so I won't belabor it too much, but essentially we have, financial plans can iterate and they kind of go through maturity levels, and there's really 4 of them, right? So The first one is when we have what we call a defined plan. This is the idea that you describe it. You can do it on paper, you can do it in Word, you can do it in financial planning software, but you get under your head what your vision, what your dreams, what you want your retirement to look like, and quantify it to some degree, right? I want to retire at this age. I want this much money. I want to travel so often. I want to buy cars so often. Here's how much I need, right? Like kind of getting those, what you need, what you want, what you wish, what you want to avoid. We call them wounds. Get them out of your head and basically on paper or in a tool or somewhere we can see it. We call that a defined plan. A lot of people don't even have that. That's a great first step. The second one then is we have what's called a feasible plan. So this is where now we add your income and your assets and your retirement incomes and things you have. And then we're trying to test for, is there a reasonable assurance that the plan will work? There's no guarantees that you will never run out of money. We call that a feasible plan. And we use Monte Carlo analysis to essentially do that. And we've talked about that in a different show in the past. Once you have those two things, now we can test, is it resilient against a handful of external impacts or shocks. Those first two things are really based upon your life and what you want and your finances, etc. But now there's a reality that external factors have an impact. Inflation, markets, taxes, death of a spouse, sickness, long-term care, Social Security cuts, right? So now these are external factors that get a say potentially on your plan. So we want to test them. And that's what we call making your plan resilient, to make sure it can withstand some of those shocks. And then the last one, just FYI, is optimize, where this is either we are retiring earlier, we're retiring larger, we're giving more away, we have bigger legacies for our heirs, whatever it might be. We're cutting down taxes, all kinds of things there. So what could you do? You could test to see if your plan could absorb the shock of Social Security benefits going down 20%, starting in 2033. Now, thankfully, we have software that can do that. So here's an example of that in Right Capital. Okay, to illustrate this, we're in the Steve and Sarah starter plan. We've done a series of shows about them in the past. You can go back and watch them. Essentially, here's their financial overlay. They have a net worth of about $1 million. They're 60 years old. They have some 401k, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs. They have some cash, primary home is paid for, a truck, a car, Sarah's 403B, and her Roth IRA. So from an overall retirement perspective, they are sitting pretty good with an overall 84% probability of success. So a very, very good, feasible plan. So they have a defined plan, a feasible plan of record. Now, in terms of it being resilient, Right Capital can essentially stress test a handful of things for us. One of them is Social Security. So any of these can be adjusted to whatever. So we'll put it at 20. Now, obviously, the projection is a 79% benefits, but 20 is pretty representative overall. And we can see here that their baseline plan's in at 84%. If they were to take a 20% reduction of benefits, of Social Security benefits, they still have an overall probability of success of 70. Now, obviously, that's not desirable. That's not what they want, but you can see it's still feasible, right? A 30% cut for their plan, that would be a little bit different scenario here, right? They would have a 62%. So they would not be able to absorb the shock of a 30% cut and have a feasible plan, but they can take the shock of a 20% reduction and still have a feasible plan of record going forward. So you can see how they can absorb to some degree that shock, right? And so you could test your plan to see if you could do that. But lastly here, what I uncover is, what do I think is going to happen? What I think is going to happen essentially is what occurred previously. So history is a great guide sometimes of what the future might bring. This has happened before. All throughout the 1970s, the Trustee Report equivalents, it wasn't exactly the same thing. There was putting out, there's going to be shortfalls, there's going to be shortfalls, there's going to be shortfalls. And, nobody did anything about it. The 1982 Trustee Report on page 2, so they're highlighting it again, basically said that without corrective legislation in the very near future, the Old Age Survivor Insurance Trust Fund will be unable to make benefit payments in the beginning no later than July of 1983. So this is in 1982. They're basically saying you got like less than 12 months, guys. And you know what happened? 1983, there was major legislation passed. And it did a whole bunch of things. But at its core, it did those two things. It raised the amount of money coming in, right? So it taxed people who were previously benefit. It changed the way self-employed people were taxed and other ways. And then it decreased some of the outcome, not for the people who were going to get it, but this is where you might have heard like your full retirement age is somewhere between 66 and 67, and it's like 66 in 2 months, 66 in 4 months, and it kind of stepped through there. Well, that was a result of legislation here, but it impacted people that were born post 1960. This is in 1983. They were 23 years old. They probably didn't care that much, right? So that was the one thing. They changed the way delayed credits were to encourage some people to hold off on taking it later, right? To give it a little bit more breathing room, right? And so they did a whole bunch of things to basically balance out both sides. And that essentially solved the problem. So from 1983 until 2033, essentially, if this projection stays the same, 50 years, the problem has been, quote unquote, solved. Will it ever be solved? Probably not. But, you know, they solved it for 2 generations, essentially receiving benefits. My guess is that this is the exact same thing that's going to happen again. Sadly for all of us, though, it's not going to happen for probably 5 to 7 years in the future, depending on kind of how close that calendar year actually gets. Right now it's 2033. It might be 32, might be 30, and then we're in 29, and that's when they fix it. I don't know, but my guess is it'll be sometime in the future. As we conclude, if you're still with me, please consider subscribing. It'll help to spread the information to others who might need it, and more importantly, you'll be notified of future episodes. Today, we talked about Social Security benefits and the possibility of them being reduced in the future. Ideally, this and everything else should be considered in conjunction with an overall comprehensive retirement plan, one that considers your retirement aspirations, goals, income needs, timing, and a whole lot more. I understand how overwhelming and confusing this can be. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below or send an email to mike@truewealth.show. But for today, a good micro action for this week might be to stress test your plan to see if you too could absorb a 20% cut in Social Security benefits. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but you know what? If it gives you the peace of mind, that is very valuable when it comes to retirement planning. Remember, Social Security benefits play an important role in supporting your overall retirement plan. While the media continues to scream and fearmonger about it going bankrupt or running out of money, hopefully now you're better informed. Hence, you can focus on more important things like planning your path to a prosperous, enjoyable, purposeful retirement. Until next time, hope you have a great day. God bless. Thanks again for taking the time to watch this week's episode of the True Wealth Financial Show. I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Additionally, you can find more information on our website at www.truewealth.show. One final note, though, as we wrap up to today's show. While I hope the information was helpful, valuable, and insightful, it's really for information and educational purposes only. Prior to making any decisions or taking any actions, I'd strongly encourage you to talk to your legal, tax, estate, or financial advisor who's familiar with the unique circumstances of your particular personal situation. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, hope you have a great day.